So this is Genesis chapter 5. Chapter 4. This is Verdant. Remember that Verdant is a business consulting organization. We help you create a dashboard for your business, and then as well we help you have an outline of your processes and a step-by-step execution with support documentation. We also help you define your big why. Why are you in this business that you're in? And then we help you by offering foundational technical assistance and coaching. So right now I'm looking at a series of the Bible of the different nuggets that we can pick up from the Bible, and this is beginning from Genesis. I've already spoken on Genesis chapter 1, and previously Genesis 2 and 3, and now we're in chapter 4. So the book of Genesis basically is about how everything began, and when you're beginning a business, it's a good place to look for inspiration as a startup. So as Verdant, we actually are a business reorganizing hub for small businesses, and I would say for startups. And the beginning, of course, is very difficult, but it also is a place where you lay the foundation. As you know, the foundation is everything. If you don't have a firm foundation, you cannot build. You cannot have a stable building that goes up many floors, because it's going to be too much weight for the foundation to take. But if we lay the right foundation, then we have enough robust structuring to be able to take up more and more and more weight. So we talked about Genesis chapter 4, about how Eve conceived and Cain and his brother and all that. And it's very interesting to know that Cain's attitude is what got in the way. And that's what actually led him to murder his own brother Abel. And then the other thing you need to know, as organizations, we do murder people. We keep them stressed and overstretched. We mismatch them with their capabilities. We give them work that is not in line with their strengths. And that is an outright murder, because you're going to be killing people's esteem. You're going to be stifling and their creativity, because they probably are creatives, but you're making them do technical work. And all this is in line with what have you created as an organizational culture, because if that is how it begins, then it will be known that, here you get to do anything, and it doesn't matter whether you're suited for it or not. So in the beginning, you'll have a nice JD, but people do stray. And we know of organizations that begin with a job description, and then in there it is haywire. Like the work looks nothing like what you signed up for. And so it's important that as a startup, if you're going to be random about the work, let it be clear that you're going to be random, and then let people choose whether they want to be adaptable or not. But in most cases, you want to develop the skills and the innate abilities that are already at work in an individual, and that is what we call trying to build the capacity of an individual or grow them in line with what they're already good at. So now I'm in chapter 5. I had said chapter 4, but it's actually chapter 5. And in this book, it says this is a book of the generations of Adam. So within a genealogy, we may actually think that it's going to be blah, 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 boring. But what God showed me was that the genealogy is also important, because it gives data, qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data is what explains the quantitative data. So quantitative on its own is not good enough. Now, what we're seeing here is a genealogy that also covers the number of years that the individual lived and how long they had lived before they got the main highlighted person. So you need to highlight people in your organization as well. Document. Information is never too much. Record everything. Like right now, I was just saying I had recorded this before, but it got lost because I didn't upload it on data when I had space. So when I needed to create space, guess what? It was erased. So you need to have a place where everything goes on record and is live if possible. It can be on the cloud. Nowadays, you can pay for a small fee for cloud storage, but do not lose information. And don't make the mistake of having it just in physical form, because physical forms are very easy to get lost. You want to duplicate, but you also want to digitize whatever is in the organization. So we have Adam, and in the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. So this just goes to show that God created human beings in his likeness. So when we are quote unquote disrespectful, we're disrespectful of our customers or our clients or employees, guess what? You are actually disrespecting God, because the God who lives in you, God lives in everybody in his likeness. Everybody has a personality of God, one way or another. If it's their creativity, their technical intellect, their abilities as individuals, their insight, that is a gift from God. It's actually God in them. Remember we said that God breathed in man and gave them life. This life is intangible but very potent and powerful. So every human being is powerful and is valid or valuable regardless of who they are. That goes for your cleaner and your watchman and everybody from the top to the least in the organizational rank. For God, it's not the least or the highest. It's actually that you get to respect all because he is in all. So male and female, he created them and blessed them and called them. Now look at what happens in verse 3. Adam begat a son in his own likeness, just like we saw in verse 1 that God created man in the likeness of God. He created. But now when it comes to Adam, his son is in Adam's likeness. And notice that Adam's likeness had been tainted by his sin. Sin corrupts. And it's interesting that even sin corrupts our DNA. Literally, we start to look a certain kind of way when we are sinful or disobedient. And then, in comes makeup and all these other things to try and do some, damage control. But people who are in line with God and their righteous in his standing sort of radiate a light. And this is not fiction, it's true. Because even the purity of your actions purify you. The purity of your attitude, of your heart purifies everything to do with you. You illuminate the world around you because you have light within you. So if there's darkness within, there will be darkness around you, and there'll be lack of transparency and openness, as we saw with Adam and Eve. Because you're ashamed of your actions, there'll be a lot of hiding. And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness. So this likeness meant the good and the bad and the ugly. And we saw that there is a generational aspect of disobedience with Cain as well as had been with Adam. So when you introduce one negative aspect in your organization, if it's not dealt with, it's going to create a life of its own, and it's going to end up affecting the future of your business. If if you don't get to deal with it as a startup, you're going to be dealing with it even when you're a global multinational company, and you'll be thinking, I should have gotten rid of this aspect while we were still small and malleable. So with time, with the bulk and the structures and everything becomes heavier, and the red tape and everything, it becomes more and more difficult to trace the cancer and get rid of it. So we don't want to get to that. So let's deal with everything strenuous and anything that is getting in the way of a smooth flow of business. While at the beginning, usually it has to do with people, usually it has to do with the characters of people, and sometimes systems also can be flawed, and sometimes it's environmental. If you need to get yourself stationed as an organization in a different place, then please do so, because the territory matters. Where you're located and situated matters as well. So the image and likeness of Seth was in his father, so he got to adopt his own biological father's traits as well. So Seth, who God wants to highlight because of where he's headed with this, which is of course Jesus Christ, eventually, it's good that you introduce the people in your organization, even if it's to your employees or even to clients. Talk about them in your profile on the website. It creates openness and transparency as to who we're dealing with, and it creates room for collaboration and continuity, because people can be contacted years later because it's clear that they were the ones who were working, let's say, with data. Maybe they're your data archivers as an organization, and there's a person that is dealing with that. Then you get to know that, and it's documented, and if there's a problem, they can be called even if it's 10 years later, just to check up on things or be consulted. So when it goes down, it goes on to talk about the years, and one of the years that you notice is to do with the number of years that Enoch lived. In verse 23 it says, all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. So we've talked about probably 7 generations before we get to Enoch, and the outstanding thing is, number one, all the previous generations had lived 900 years you have 962, 800 years, 895. So we're talking about almost 9 centuries of life. But Enoch only gets to live 3 centuries. He was 300 and something when he walked with God and disappeared. And why this is so important is that not only do we know that he had lived 365 years, it is explained that he didn't die. Like the rest, he did not die. And why he didn't die, God took him. And why did God take him? Because he had walked with God, he had fellowship with God, and it was so close and tight that God wanted him all to himself, I guess. And that is so important, because you'd be wondering, if you just stuck with the 365, you'd be, wait a minute, why did Enoch live 365 years? And I am seeing a trend of this and this. So it's important that you keep a trend analysis, but also let the trend analysis that is based on numerical also be backed by your qualitative explanatory info. So it's important to note the righteousness of a man also took him to God, which is the outstanding thing that God wanted to highlight. That difference had to be marked, and there will be marked differences in a trend for you to study what is the significance of that difference. And then we go down to Methuselah and then down to Noah. So after Noah is born, this is what Methuselah said. He called his name Noah, saying, "This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands," meaning that he saw a vision for Noah. And it's true that Noah was a sort of Messiah in his age and his generation. And it's important that you start to call things and name them, tell them. I mean, decide for yourself what the future of your organization is going to be, and call it as you would want it to be. And that is the power of the tongue, that we have the God in us, and the God in us can determine outcomes by verbalizing them. And he said that this is the one who comforts us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because the ground which the Lord hath cast. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years, and begat sons and daughters. All the days of Lamech were 770 years and 7 years. This is Lamech, not Methuselah. Noah was actually Lamech's son. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So we're just going to pick those 2 or 3 principles from Genesis chapter 5, that A, likeness means that God is in everybody, and then B, you got to document. 100 years from now, you will not be around to tell us about how the organization's, qualities and quirks and, all the unique attributes of it. But if it's written down and documented, then people can always refer 100 years from now. In Genesis 6, we talk about Noah, and we talk about how there were men, the sons of men who were known as men of renown. And I've talked about this before. There were giants in the earth. Just because something is renowned, in verse 4 it says, there were giants in the earth in those days. Also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, they bare children to them, and the same became mighty men, which were old men of renown. It doesn't mean that when something is of renown, it is clean. You can actually have a lot of success that has been gained out of corruption. And we will see that at the beginning it says in verse 1, and it came to pass that men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, the sons of God, meaning demons and spirits, so the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them as wives, which they chose. So God's expectation was that these daughters would actually rebuff the approaches or the suggestions of these spirits or demons, but they accepted them. And this led to a corruption of the race, and we're going to see how God had to deal with it. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So now we see the importance of documenting the ages of the previous generations, because now it's clear that 120 was a far cry from the previous ages that have been mentioned. The lifespans and the current lifespan in the world today is an average of 72 years. So even when 20 was gracious of God, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in other words, they had intercourse with daughters of men, and they bare children to them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's what I was saying. When you have garbage in, you're going to have garbage out. These demons, who were previously angels, but because they did not keep to their place, they were cast down by God. They approached and had intercourse with daughters of men, and they gave birth to children who were big, mighty, tall, mighty men. But this is what God has to say about them, that they were wicked because they were polluted. The generations were polluted by demonic intrusion. Now, in a context of a business, you're going to have demonic intrusion of all sorts. You're going to interact with business people that are not clean, that have spiritual garbage, or what I would say, spiritual corruption. And guess what? That gets to infiltrate into your business, because finances is a point of contact. When people give you money or they transact with you in any way, they sort of are buying you. And sometimes we don't look at it that way, but transactions actually tie people more than any other thing. Probably the next thing would be sex, intercourse. And intercourse and money is something that the demonic realm uses a lot to tie people into the world of evil, basically, because it's easy for you to be bought. The business can be bought because there's money involved. It can actually be sold to the kingdom of darkness because of the transaction that money represents. So people buy into a piece of you through the money they give you. Basically, that's what I'm saying. And in this case, it wasn't money, it was intercourse or having sex, which is again also a transaction. We're going to see that maybe in another session, but there's an exchange and a oneness that comes from having intercourse, and that's why it was kept for marriage. And that's why we see in the previous chapter that Adam knew Eve his wife. It was his wife. It wasn't a random woman. In the same case, when we are busy trading information and allowing business and money to transact with us, or get involved in transactions that then involve us, we're giving a piece of ourselves. And if that business, you give a piece of your business, guess what? It means that it's open for the entire business to be taken over. And if it's by the wrong elements, then you're going to have your entire business overtaken by the wrong elements. So you want to transact with the right elements of truth, of integrity, of purity. So be careful, the men and women that come in to do business with you. So it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved his heart. Why? Because God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of his thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Again, a corrupt mind and a corrupt heart can only give off corruption. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. And so comes in Noah. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. There are generations of Noah. Noah was a just man. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with God. And that is why he was chosen for this task. I was doing a podcast earlier, and I was saying how because of the task that you have, the opposition will match the task, because the task at hand is so heavy that you need to have an opposition that will give you the muscle to perform your mandate or your task. And so, God set up Noah as the man who would help him to wipe away the rest of the generation, but save him because he was righteous. He's a man who was just, perfect in his generation, and walked with God, just like Enoch. Remember that God will only highlight the people who are close to him because he wants to show the purposes that they served and the reason why they were close to his heart. And you know how that affected the future generations. So because Noah was close to God's heart, he had a conversation with God one day, and God said, hey, I am sick and tired of these people, and I am going to wipe them out. And remember that these conversations you have to create time for conversations with God as an organization and also as an individual. And these are times where you seek the face of God for direction and just spend time with him. And at that point, he will give you a secret or two. And in this case, Noah was privy to a secret. And the secret was that God was about to destroy the whole earth. And Jesus actually references this part of the Bible where Noah talks to God. God talks to Noah about the flood and says that the end times will be as the days of Noah, when people were eating and drinking and giving to marriage and given to marriage. They were not aware of the shift that was about to occur in terms of the rain that would destroy them. And so Noah becomes the point person or the point man that God uses to separate his own from those of the world. Very, very critical. And this is something that even as a business, you've got to separate people, sheep from goats. And this is a separation that will save your life, because those who are not for you are against you, period. There is no if, maybe, perhaps gray area. Now, it's not so bad for clients because you can serve any client. But when it comes to the more intimate aspects of your life and those that you bring close to your space, it's got to be people that God has chosen to bring into your life. And if there are people who have no good to your life, then you should cooperate with God and get them out of your business. It could be employees, it could be partners, it could be all sorts of people that are coming into your kitchen business. And maybe it's a good idea for you to keep them out. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. Again, corruption is real even in the business world, and corrupt business comes from corrupt people. So if you would get to have the partnership of the Holy Spirit, ask the Holy Spirit, who should I do business with? And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. So these are the instructions of how God was going to set apart Noah and his family as the chosen ones who are going to repopulate the earth. He says, do this. And these are the instructions. You will get instructions from God. When he asks you to do something, it even comes with instructions. What we call downloads are just instructions. Sometimes it's not just about God forcing you or coercing you. He needs you to do your part for the bigger picture. And sometimes when you look at a task, you just look at it as a task. But God has a purpose for the task at hand. And this is the instruction that he gives. And he gives even the wood that will be used. He tells him to coat it with pitch, to coat the ark with pitch. He tells him who to bring into the ark, and he tells him even the animals to bring in. The ark itself was even measured, and those were dimensions that God gave himself. And guess what? Noah followed all the instructions. Sometimes we don't follow the instructions, and therefore we don't have the vehicle that will save us. The enterprise that Noah got into for God was building an ark. He used resources. He used manpower. He built something that beat and stood the test of the weather, that weathered the storm and saved his life. You could be given a business idea by God that is going to help you weather a storm, an economic storm, a catastrophe, a pandemic, whatever it is. So he got the fowls in, he got the cattle, he got everything. And take all the food that you will need. God even told him or instructed him on the food that they would need to take with them for their food to consume in the ark. So thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded. Now, I'm doing this very rushed right now, but if you need to have one-on-one business coaching, I could do that for you. Kindly get in touch with me. And this is just a snippet of what we will be doing. As I have told you before, Verdant is a reorganizing hub for small businesses, and we give them a numbers dashboard on the background of an audit, and we outline processes, and we convert these processes to step-by-step execution with support documentation, and we also help you define why are you in business, your big why. We offer startup foundational technical assistance and coaching. So on to chapter 7. So Noah has gotten to follow all these instructions. And they came into the house of the ark. I have seen, this is what God told him. The Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house unto the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Meaning that the righteousness of Noah is what saved both him and his family. Ladies and gentlemen, there is something that can save you and your business, and that is righteousness before God. Anything else will be a bit underhanded and corrupted in its version, because it's only God that can truly give you a solution, a pure solution, where you don't have to steal anything or beg or do anything that you're going to regret. So he did what he was told. Of every clean beast you shall take the fowls of the air, and for yet 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth. Now God is a God of times and seasons. He even gave the time 7 years. He said, in 7 years I'm going to cause it to, in 7 days, sorry. So we need to understand, are we in the timing of God? There's a timing for product launch, there's a timing for an event, there's a timing for anything really. There's a set time for it. And even while you look at your calendar as dates, for God they have significance. Ask yourself, am I in line? Is my business in line with the significance that God has on his calendar for the times and seasons ahead? And God said, in 7 days, and then in 40 days, for yet 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights. I even told him how long the duration of the rain would be. And then get this, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Now, could we be at the precipice of something like this happening right now in the earth? And are you aware of it? And has God told you what to do to weather this particular storm that is coming, that could wipe out the whole earth? And are you one of the people that are going to be saved? You're going to be in an ark. So Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters was upon the earth. A lot of people give the excuse of age, but really it's a perceived redundancy that causes us to be lame at our old age. It's a lame excuse. It's not about age, it's about your perceived value at that age. And you need to know that age is not an excuse for God. God used people, even Moses, when they were quite advanced in age. So he went in with his wife, and because of the waters of the flood, and he got the beasts. So some things that God tells you to do, you have to use his help, because they're going to be huge tasks. I mean, how do you ensure that you get beasts? And I mean, these are wild animals that could kill you, or maybe they were tame them, I don't know. But birds, how do you get? I mean, did he speak to them? Were there angels? There's got to be supernatural help. And that's how he managed to finish this work and complete it and obey to the letter, to the very last bit. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the earth, of the great deep, broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So the day did arrive according to God's timing. Now, God is not going to wait for you to be ready for something. He's going to make things happen. And while you would have been the one that tapped into that vision that he gave you and got an advantage, look at the people who started to build hospitals, like the countries that started to invest in the healthcare sector. When COVID hit, they were ready. People who are already manufacturing masks, and they were already doing, all these things. They were just selling what they normally sell anyway. But for some people, it was a novel idea, and they were like, okay, this is kind of strange, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. God could tell you something now that is going to be useful and beneficial to you 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and he's going to give you adequate time to achieve it. But it's not going to wait for you. It's going to happen anyway. So the ones who are ready are the ones who are going to harness from it. While everybody else is suffering, you're going to be benefiting. So the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. All the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both fowl and of cattle and of beasts. Everything died. All whose nostrils was the breath of life. Remember, we talked about the breath of life. of God of all that was in the dry land died, and every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive. Noah and his family only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Remember, this is all intel that God had given Noah because Noah walked with God. So remember that this is Verdant Business Coaching, and we're doing this because we want your organization or your startup to be on a firm foundation, to be based on real and true principles. So we are a reorganizing hub. That's Verdant Business Coaching. We give you a numbers dashboard in the background of an audit. We outline your processes and we convert those processes into step-by-step execution with support documentation. We also help you to define your big why. We offer startup foundational technical assistance and coaching. Let's move on to Genesis 8 next.